When I walked back into that building, it felt less like home and more like a stage. And I was the quiet extra who didn't belong in the family's spotlight. Their laughter echoed off marble floors, their voices cutting through the hum of the office like applause I could never earn. I'd spent years studying, preparing, believing that coming back meant finally being seen. But the moment my father looked up from the conference table, his eyes said it all. I wasn't part of his legacy, just a reminder of what he never valued. They called me dead weight, behind closed doors. But the truth, they wanted me to believe it. That's the thing about family. They don't need to stab you in the back when they can smile while twisting the knife right in front of you. I thought silence would protect me. If I worked hard, stayed invisible, maybe I'd earn their respect without asking for it. But silence doesn't earn you dignity. It only gives people permission to forget you. Every time I passed through that office, I felt it. The side glances, the smirks, the jokes that weren't even whispered anymore. They'd already written the ending to my story. The weak son who couldn't live up to the family name. What they didn't know is that sometimes the quiet ones are just gathering the sound of every insult, waiting for the right moment to let it echo back. Dad's voice always carried weight. Not because of what he said, but how easily he made others believe him. Dead weight, he called me that afternoon. Not in anger, but in casual honesty. Like it was just a fact he was tired of repeating. I remember every detail. The curve of his smile, the click of his pen, the silence that followed. It wasn't the insult that broke me. It was realizing no one in that room thought he was wrong. That night, I sat in my car long after everyone left. I didn't cry. I just watched the lights of the office fade, one by one, until the building looked hollow, like it had finally shown me its true face. Somewhere between anger and clarity, I understood something vital. They'd already buried me. And maybe letting them believe I was gone was the only way I'd ever return strong enough to make them see me again. The next morning, I resigned without saying a word. No dramatic speech, no confrontation. Just a signature and silence. They didn't even look up when I dropped the letter on the desk. To them, it was confirmation of what they'd always believed. I was never cut out for this. But as I stepped into the cold, the wind felt different. Sharp. Alive. And for the first time, their laughter didn't echo. It faded behind me, swallowed by the sound of something new. Purpose. Rock bottom isn't loud. It doesn't scream or break you all at once. It whispers one empty morning at a time. Weeks passed after I left the company, and the silence in my apartment grew heavier than their laughter ever was. I'd scroll through job listings, hear their success mentioned on the news, and feel that same ache settle deeper into my chest. But pain has a strange way of teaching you what comfort never could. I realized I wasn't mourning the job. I was mourning the version of me that still wanted their approval. I started running every morning, not to stay fit, but to stop thinking. The cold air burned my lungs, but at least it reminded me I was still alive. Each step became a question. What if they were right about me? And somewhere between the sweat and the silence, a small voice began to argue back. What if they weren't? The universe has a way of placing the right people in your path when you finally stop chasing the wrong ones. I met Evelyn at a local cafe. Or maybe she met me. She didn't offer sympathy, just conversation that cut straight to truth. They didn't see you because you never showed them who you were, she said. Those words felt like a match in a long, unlit room. She taught me that revenge isn't power. Control is. For weeks, we met after her work hours. She showed me how to read financial statements, track market shifts, and find leverage in places others overlook. Every chart felt like a new language, and every insight felt like reclaiming something stolen. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning relevance. One evening, as rain hammered the windows, I looked at the plan we'd drawn, and it hit me. This wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving I could build something without their permission. That realization felt like breathing fresh air after years underground. For the first time, I didn't need their table. I was ready to build my own. Power doesn't announce itself. It gathers quietly, in places no one's watching. Months passed, and while they celebrated quarterly profits, I built something of my own in the shadows. It started with a laptop, a notebook, and a dream that didn't need their validation. I studied competitors, tracked suppliers, mapped weaknesses. Every move built from what they'd ignored. They laughed when I left, but that laughter became the rhythm I worked to. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was building inevitability. Evelyn became my compass. She'd walk into that loft with her calm certainty and challenge every idea I brought her. "If they could break you, they would have done it already," she said once. I stopped trying to outdo my family. I started outgrowing them. Each plan we refined made me feel less like a reject, and more like what I'd always been. Their equal. Maybe even their successor. By spring, the first contracts started coming in. Small clients, overlooked by the big names. I gave them something my family never did: respect. Every deal signed felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity. People started calling me Mr. Hale again, but this time, it meant something. I wasn't my father's son anymore. I was my own man, and the empire they built was starting to feel smaller. Word spread fast, too fast. Competitors started noticing us, wondering who this quiet upstart was that kept stealing contracts. My family didn't know yet, but they would soon. I watched their company's numbers dip and told myself it wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was justice. But deep down, I knew that the line between the two was getting harder to see. Evelyn asked me once, "When will you tell them who you are?" I didn't have an answer. Part of me wanted to walk into their office tomorrow, lay the truth on the table, and watch their pride collapse. But another part, the wiser part, knew patience was the real weapon. They taught me what cruelty looked like in daylight. I'd show them what strength looked like in silence. It started small. Late payments, lost contracts, excuses that sounded more desperate each week. My family's empire wasn't collapsing. It was decaying piece by piece. I watched from afar as they blamed the market, blamed each other. Anything but themselves. That's the curse of pride. It blinds you to your own reflection until it's too late. I didn't need to hurt them. I just needed to let their own arrogance finish the job. Vanessa always thought she could talk her way out of anything. But charm doesn't fix numbers, and flattery doesn't rewrite failure. The cracks showed in her voice first, sharper, faster, like she was arguing with herself more than anyone else. It's strange, watching people who once laughed at you start to sound afraid. It doesn't bring peace, just clarity. My father's silence said more than his anger ever did. He'd built a world where weakness was punished, and now that same world was devouring him. I used to want him to apologize, to look me in the eye and see what he'd done. But as I watched him drown in his own pride, I realized I didn't need his apology anymore. I had something better: distance. Meanwhile, my company kept growing. We didn't chase clients. They came to us. Reputation spreads faster than revenge ever could. Evelyn would smile and remind me, "You're winning the right way, without touching the knife." She was right. The victory wasn't in destroying them. It was in becoming everything they said I couldn't be. Then came the first rumor, a mysterious new firm stealing every major client they once held. My family called emergency meetings, hired consultants, even whispered about sabotage. They had no idea the ghost haunting them was their own blood. I didn't plan to stay hidden forever, but I wanted them to feel it first, the same helplessness they once made me live with. There's a moment right before truth hits, when everyone still believes they're safe. I could see it on their faces that night, the easy laughter, the practiced arrogance. The industry gala was their world, their comfort zone. I walked in without fanfare. Just another face in a crowd of polished masks. They didn't notice me at first. But the moment my name appeared on the projector, under Founder and CEO, Hale Strategics, their smiles froze mid-conversation. Silence did the rest. Their world shattered without a sound. My father's jaw tightened first. Then Vanessa's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on marble. Tyler laughed nervously like he was trying to wake himself from a bad dream. I didn't move, didn't gloat. I just stood there, surrounded by everything they once claimed I'd never have. Respect, recognition, and silence heavy enough to make them feel small. That was the moment they finally saw me. When Richard finally approached, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment, but fear. He asked how long I'd been planning this. I told him the truth. Since the day you called me dead weight. The crowd hushed. Cameras flashing like lightning. It wasn't revenge that made my voice steady. It was freedom. I'd stopped waiting for his approval the moment I realized I didn't need it to win. Vanessa tried to smile through the wreckage, spinning lies faster than truth could catch them. "It's just business," she said, pretending not to care. But I saw the flicker, that flash of humiliation behind her eyes. Tyler avoided me completely, his arrogance finally replaced by something human. Regret. For the first time, they weren't a family empire. They were just people, standing in the ruins of their own pride. When I finally left the gala, I didn't look back. The applause wasn't for them anymore. It was for me. I walked out into the night knowing the war was over. Not because they'd lost, but because I'd outgrown the battlefield. The hardest part of revenge isn't the planning. It's realizing you don't need it anymore. They called a private meeting the next morning. No cameras, no applause, just us. For years, I'd imagined what this moment would feel like. The triumphant return, the shock, the apologies. But standing outside that door, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Revenge is loud in your head until you finally have the chance to use it. And then it's just quiet. Almost peaceful. When I walked in, the silence hit harder than their laughter ever had. My father tried to start with business talk. Projections, mergers, nonsense. But I stopped him. "We don't need to pretend," I said. "You wanted to see the man you called dead weight. Here I am." His eyes flickered. Pride, shame, something between the two. Vanessa stared like she didn't recognize me. Tyler just looked tired. Maybe for the first time, they were human. Richard finally asked the question I'd been waiting to hear. Why? I told him the truth. Because he needed to see that power doesn't come from fear. It comes from respect. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Every word I spoke felt like years of silence finding its purpose. He didn't argue. He just sat there. The weight of his own words from years ago hanging between us like smoke that never cleared. Vanessa broke first. She said she didn't mean what she'd said years ago, that it was all just business banter. I didn't reply. Tyler mumbled an apology he could barely finish. And my father? He just stared at the floor, then whispered, "You did what I couldn't. You changed. For a man like him, that was an admission of defeat. For me, it was closure. When I stood to leave, no one tried to stop me." My father's voice followed me as I reached the door. "You'll always be a Hale." I paused, turned once, and said, "Yes. Just not the kind you tried to make me." Then, I walked out, not as their son or their failure, but as the man they forced me to become. The door closed behind me, soft and final. It didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like release. In the weeks that followed, the silence felt different. Not empty, but earned. The empire I'd built kept growing, faster than even I expected. But the noise of success didn't thrill me anymore. I wasn't chasing their approval. I was learning to forgive the version of myself that ever needed it. Sometimes winning isn't about taking the throne. It's about walking away from it and realizing the kingdom was never yours to begin with. Evelyn visited one last time. She smiled the way people do when they already know what you're thinking. "You got what you wanted," she said. "Now what?" I told her the truth. "Now I build something that outlives ego." She nodded, proud. Maybe even relieved. Mentors don't stay forever. They just make sure you can stand without them. And I finally could. A letter arrived a few days later. From my father. Just a few words. I was wrong. "I'm proud. No grand apology. No plea for forgiveness." But for a man like him, that was everything. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some closures don't require conversation. They just need time and distance. Months later, I visited the company one last time. Not to take it, but to see it. To understand what I'd outgrown. Vanessa was polite. Tyler quiet. My father older. The walls that once felt like a cage now looked small. Like the memory of something that used to matter. I realized then that the real revenge wasn't in their loss. It was in my peace. People still ask how I did it, how the dead weight became the boss. I tell them it wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering my worth when no one else did. Every empire falls. But if you're patient enough, you can build something stronger in its shadow. Something built on grace instead of greed. I didn't destroy my family's name. I redefined it. And that, I think, is the truest form of victory.